She left a folder on the dashboard of my truck, and that's how all of this started unraveling. Not a text message, not a whisper at night when she thought I was asleep, not a tearful confession. Just a plain black folder, one of those cheap plastic office ones with the sliding clasp, sitting on my dashboard waiting for pressure. I hadn't even noticed it until I turned off the ignition and reached for my sunglasses. The folder was wedged under them. At first, I figured it was something work-related. Marissa sometimes left stuff for me to drop off at the post office or give to her assistant. She was always drowning in paperwork for the clinic. But this wasn't clinic stuff. It had my name on it. Just my name, scribbled in her handwriting, and that was enough to give me pause. I opened it right there in the parking lot of the grocery store, engine ticking as it cooled. Inside were three things: a brochure for a beachside condo development in Mexico, a printed boarding pass for a flight out of Denver in 2 weeks' time, and a receipt for a down payment made via wire transfer. The name on the receipt wasn't hers. It wasn't mine either. It was someone else entirely, a name I'd never heard before. I sat there, staring at the name, letting the pieces fall into place like a slow-motion train wreck. At first, I convinced myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe she was helping a friend. Maybe she was arranging a surprise for us, something romantic, something stupid. But no, that wasn't it. I know her handwriting. I know the way she plans things, the way she covers her tracks without realizing it. And I know the look in her eyes when she's lying. I didn't say anything right away. I went home, dropped the groceries on the counter, and watched her put them away like nothing was out of place. She smiled at me, gave me one of those quick kisses on the cheek like she used to before everything got so distant. It made my stomach twist. The folder was still in the truck, and all I could think about was the name on that wire transfer. Alex Navarro. Never heard of him, but I was about to. That night, I waited until she was asleep, and then I pulled her planner from her work bag. She always wrote things down by hand, one of her little quirks. In the back, where she kept personal notes, I found it. A small heart drawn next to the dates of her dental conference in San Diego. Except now I knew she wasn't going to San Diego. She was going to Puerto Vallarta. And not alone. The worst part wasn't that she lied. It was how carefully she'd planned it. The effort she put into this affair made it feel like some kind of full-time job. And here I was, her husband, working double shifts for 6 months straight so we could finally renovate the kitchen like she always wanted. I built that island with my own hands, every tile laid down while she was probably texting him. Every late night I came home to her already in bed. I thought she was just tired from work. Turns out, she was just tired of pretending. "Everything okay?" she asked the next morning, sipping her coffee like it didn't taste bitter coming out of a liar's mouth. "Yeah," I said. "Just a lot on my mind." "You're working too much," she said, walking over and kissing my forehead. "We should take a trip." I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. Maybe we should. I didn't confront her that day. Or the next. I needed more. I needed to be sure because part of me still hoped I was wrong. That folder could have been planted. It could have been a setup. Maybe she was planning a weird anniversary surprise with a fake name. But deep down, I already knew. I started doing what any normal guy in my situation would do. I watched. I paid attention. I made excuses to come home early. I checked her computer when she was in the shower. Nothing. She was too smart for that. Then one night, she left her tablet on the kitchen counter while she took a call in the backyard. She always used headphones, always private. That night she must have been too distracted, too comfortable. Maybe she thought I'd gone to bed. I didn't even have to snoop. The tablet lit up on its own, syncing with her email. The message preview said it all. "Counting the days. I'll bring the sketchbook and the new oil paints. Can't wait to see you. Art supplies. Alex Navarro." It all clicked. He wasn't just some fling. He was something else. Something that had been going on long enough to involve routines, favorite places, shared hobbies. It wasn't physical. It was emotional, deep, and practiced. That's when the rage hit. Not the kind that makes you shout. The kind that makes you cold. Calculating. Focused. That night, I lay next to her and didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, wondering how long she'd been doing this. Wondering what I was to her now. A placeholder? A financial safety net? Just a name she hadn't removed from the lease yet? I thought about waking her up and demanding answers, but something held me back. She wasn't going to confess. She wasn't going to cry and beg and fall into my arms like in some cheap movie. She'd deny it. She'd twist it. She'd act like I was crazy. No, I wasn't giving her that chance. Instead, I started planning. I made copies of everything, the folder, the boarding pass, the emails. I contacted a friend of mine who works private security. He owed me a favor from way back. I gave him the name Alex Navarro and asked for everything he could find. What I got back was more than enough. Local artist. Teaches painting classes at a studio downtown. Single. 42. Used to be a barista. Apparently talented enough to land a gallery feature, which was where they met. Marissa bought one of his paintings. That's how it started. Now I had faces, dates, and enough of a timeline to connect the dots. I wasn't going to confront her in the house. I wasn't going to scream at her across the kitchen. That's what she would expect. No, I had something else in mind. And that brings us to the beginning of the end. 2 weeks from that morning, she'd be flying to Mexico. With him. To a place they were going to pretend was theirs for a few days. I didn't stop her. I let her go. I watched her walk through security with a smile on her face, her roller bag clicking neatly behind her, hair tied in that same knot she used whenever she wanted to look effortlessly elegant. She had no idea I was there. I stood behind one of the support columns near the entrance to the terminal, ball cap pulled low, sunglasses on even though we were indoors. I wasn't hiding because I was scared. I was watching because I needed to see it with my own eyes, her leaving to spend a weekend with another man, a man who probably thought he'd won something. She turned once near the gate, looked around like she was scanning for someone, maybe hoping I wasn't following her, maybe half hoping I was, just to feel wanted in some sick way. I stayed where I was. Let her think whatever made her feel better. She turned back, disappeared through the gate, and that was it. My wife was gone. 2 hours later, I pulled into the parking lot of a small art studio on the other side of town. It was attached to a coffee shop with exposed brick walls and tables filled with people who looked like they'd never used a drill in their life. Inside, on the second floor, was the studio where Alex Navarro taught his classes. His name was stenciled on the glass door, all artsy and stylized like it meant something important. I didn't go in. That wasn't the point. I just wanted to see the place, see the space where my wife had laughed too much and leaned in too close. My guy had sent me everything, photos of them together at gallery nights, lunches after classes, even one where she was holding one of his paintings like it was some precious artifact. She had never looked at anything of mine like that, not the deck I built by hand, not the shelves I installed in the garage for her gardening supplies, not even our wedding photos. I sat in my truck for almost an hour, watching people go in and out. Eventually, he showed up. Alex. The man whose name was on the receipt, the man my wife had chosen to escape with. He looked exactly how I expected, slim, clean-cut, with that kind of effortless look people spend a lot of money trying to pretend is natural. He wore a loose shirt, paint splattered on the front like it was on purpose. I could see the appeal. He was the opposite of me in every way. No calluses, no trace of exhaustion from early mornings and double shifts. Just a guy who probably thought emotions were enough currency to pay bills with. I kept my hands on the steering wheel, tight enough that I had to force myself to let go. There was no reason to do anything then. My plan was already in motion. Back at the house, everything was exactly where she left it. Her makeup bag in the bathroom, her robe on the back of the bedroom door, her laptop open on the kitchen island with tabs still open to Pinterest boards full of vacation outfits and interior design ideas. I opened her closet, checked the gaps where her favorite clothes had been. Gone. She didn't just pack for a weekend. She packed like she was going to live a different life, one she had been fantasizing about for months. I found the small lockbox in the top drawer where she kept our passports and birth certificates. Hers was gone. Mine was still there. That said enough. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up reviewing everything again, the emails, the photos, the receipts. Not because I needed more proof. I already had that. I stayed up because I was trying to understand. I had done nothing to deserve this. I didn't neglect her. I didn't cheat. I didn't yell or disappear or waste our money. I supported her through everything. Every career change, every mood swing, every family drama she brought into our house. I was there. And apparently, being there wasn't enough. The next morning, I got up before the sun, grabbed her tablet, and sat at the kitchen table. I didn't open her social media. I opened the shared folder on her cloud account. Most people don't realize that when they sync their devices, everything they do leaves a trail. I found her journal. Not a physical one, but a file she probably thought was private. She had named it something vague, probably assuming I'd never click on it. But I did. And I read it. Every word. There were entries about how she felt stuck, about how the house felt like a cage. She wrote about how I was a good man, but too predictable, too grounded, too normal. She said she missed feeling like someone wanted her, that she hadn't felt desired in years, that she craved spontaneity. She said Alex made her feel seen, like she wasn't just someone's wife but a person with her own world. And then there was a line that stuck with me like a splinter. Darren is steady, but I want fire, even if it burns me. That was all I needed to know. By the time she landed in Mexico, I had already changed the locks, redirected her mail, and frozen our joint accounts. I wasn't going to wait for her to come back and tell me some story about how she needed to find herself. She had already found what she was looking for. Now it was time for me to figure out what I needed, and it wasn't going to be forgiveness or therapy or any of that tired talk about working things out. She made her choice. And now it was my turn. She came back 3 days later, exactly when her flight said she would. I was parked 2 rows back from the arrival lane, engine off, waiting in silence. She didn't expect to see me. That much was obvious when she walked out of the terminal, pulling her suitcase with the kind of casualness people have when they think the world is still normal. Her eyes scanned the curb, clearly expecting to call a rideshare, and then they landed on me. I stepped out of the truck before she could turn around. Her steps slowed, her face froze just for a second, then she forced a smile. "Hey," she said, acting like I was just early to pick her up from a business trip. "Get in," I said, walking back to the driver's side without waiting for a response. She didn't argue. She loaded her bag in the back and sat in the passenger seat like nothing unusual had happened. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. She looked out the window, probably wondering what I knew. I let her stew in it. I didn't rush anything. I had been sitting on this for long enough to know that silence worked better than shouting. When people are forced to sit with the weight of what they've done, they start talking to fill the gap. She broke first. "I know you're mad," she said, her voice low, trying to play soft. "Can we talk about this when we get home?" I shook my head, keeping my eyes on the road. "We're not going home. That's not your house anymore." She turned toward me fast. "What are you talking about?" "I changed the locks. Your stuff's in storage. I'll send you the address later." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, then closed again. She looked out the window, took a deep breath. "You went through my things," she finally said, trying to redirect the blame. "You disappeared with another man for 3 days. What did you think was going to happen? That I'd be here waiting with open arms?" "It wasn't what you think," she said, but her voice lacked any real conviction. "I think you made a reservation with him under a fake name and flew to Mexico using money from our account. I think you lied about a conference, packed clothes you never wear around me, and deleted messages thinking you were smart. I think you've been planning this for longer than you'd admit. So, you tell me, what am I thinking that's so wrong?" She stayed quiet after that. I could feel her shifting in her seat, probably wondering how much I had seen, how much I knew, how much she could still control. She didn't know about the journal. She didn't know I'd read every word she wrote about him, about me, about the version of herself she thought she deserved to be. "I don't want to fight," she said after a while. "I'm not fighting. I'm done." There was a long pause. Then she said, "We should go to therapy." I actually laughed at that. Not loud, but enough for her to hear the insult in it. "You've been running around with another guy for months, and now that you got caught, you want therapy?" "It wasn't just running around," she snapped, then stopped herself, realizing too late she had admitted more than she meant to. I pulled into a public park lot, stoked the engine, and turned to her. "You don't love me. You haven't in a while. That's fine. I can live with that. What I can't live with is being lied to, played like I'm a backup plan while you go test out other options. You made your choice when you got on that plane." "It wasn't about love," she said, her tone softer again, like she was trying to rewind the conversation to a safer point. "It was about needing something different. Then go have different. You're free. I'm not dragging this through court. We'll split what we have. I've already started the paperwork. You'll get half. No drama, no scenes. Just end it." Her eyes got glassy. She blinked hard, fighting tears that weren't going to change anything. "So that's it?" she asked, like she expected some last-minute gesture of reconciliation. "Yeah, that's it." We sat in silence for a long time. She didn't reach for my hand. She didn't try to apologize again. Maybe because she knew it was useless, or maybe because she just didn't care enough. I didn't ask. I didn't want to hear another version of the story where she justified it all with some overused line about personal growth or unmet needs. I knew who I was. I knew what I gave. And if it wasn't enough for her, it would be more than enough for someone else one day. "You can take the truck," I said, tossing her the keys. "I'll grab a ride." "Where are you going?" she asked, probably still thinking she had a right to know. "Somewhere that doesn't have your name on it." She didn't say anything else. I got out, shut the door behind me, and walked across the lot without looking back. I didn't need to see her reaction. I had already seen enough. The thing about revenge is people always expect it to be some big dramatic move, something loud or violent or messy. That's not how I wanted to handle this. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want to get even by sinking to her level. What I wanted was for her to feel what I felt, without the screaming, without broken dishes, without begging. Just real consequences. Quiet, clean, and lasting. So I started by making sure the people she respected the most knew the truth. Her boss, her mother, and the mutual friends she had spent years carefully crafting this perfect image around. These were people she made sure always saw her polished, composed, and ahead of the game. I knew exactly where to press. I sent 3 emails. That was it. Each with attachments, screenshots, timelines, copies of the receipts from her secret trip, and most importantly, a few pages from her journal that I had saved. Not the worst parts, but the ones where she talked about how Alex made her feel alive, how I was just something stable she could rely on until she figured out what she really wanted. I didn't include insults, didn't even add commentary. Just the facts. Let them read and decide. Her boss replied the same day, short and formal, saying it was a personal matter, but thanking me for sharing. Her mother didn't respond at all, but I know she saw it. The next time I checked Marissa's social media, her mother had removed every photo of them together and unfollowed her. That was enough confirmation. Our friends, though, they were the ones who reacted the loudest. Not all of them, of course. Some stayed neutral. But the ones who mattered reached out to me directly. People I hadn't heard from in months suddenly had a lot to say. Turns out, some of them had suspicions but didn't want to get involved. A couple even said they saw her out with a man who wasn't me and assumed we were separated or had some kind of arrangement. That part made me feel sick, how easy it had been for her to walk around with him, out in public, without worrying about anyone telling me. I wasn't invisible. I just didn't matter enough for them to speak up. But now they knew better. I also canceled the joint credit cards, transferred my direct deposit to a separate account, and removed her from the insurance. Everything legal, nothing sneaky. I notified the bank that I would be filing for divorce and requested that all communication about our accounts come directly to me. When she tried to use the card for a dinner 2 days later, it got declined. That was the first time she reached out again. She called me late, probably after checking her balance and realizing her access was gone. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail asking if we could talk, if I could please explain what was going on with the finances, that she was trying to pay for something and felt embarrassed. I saved the voicemail and didn't call back. She texted the next morning asking for a meeting. Said she just wanted to understand what the next steps were. That was the first time she stopped pretending we were going to fix anything. Now it was business. Fine. I met her at a neutral place, a diner we used to go to, back when things were still good. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner booth, hands wrapped around a coffee mug like she was cold. She looked tired. Not just physically, but like she hadn't been sleeping right. I didn't feel bad for her, but I noticed it. I sat down, didn't offer a greeting, didn't ask how she was. She got to the point. I want to know what you've told people, she said, not accusing, just flat. I sent the truth to 3 people, I replied. Your boss, your mom, and a few of our friends. Her jaw clenched. She nodded, looked down at her cup. You didn't need to do that. You didn't need to fly to Mexico with another man either, but here we are. I didn't plan for this to happen like that. You planned enough to use a fake name on the hotel. Don't pretend this was an accident. I didn't cheat on you to hurt you. You cheated because you're selfish. You didn't care if it hurt me or not. That's the truth. She looked like she wanted to argue but didn't. She sat there, staring at the table, breathing like each word cost her something. I can't undo it, she said. No, you can't. Are you going to drag this out? Make it messy? No. I told you, I'm not interested in drama. You'll get your share. But you're not walking away clean. People know who you are now. That's what you earned. She looked up at me, finally, and there was nothing in her eyes. No sadness, no anger. Just resignation. Does he know? She asked. I tilted my head slightly. Who? Alex. I sent him a copy of the same folder. She laughed once, short and bitter. You're serious. You wanted fire, remember? That's what you wrote. Well, now you've got it. She didn't reply. Just looked back at her coffee. I stood up, left a few bills on the table. I'll have the lawyer send over the papers next week. You don't need to contact me again unless it's about signing. She nodded, didn't say goodbye, didn't follow me out. When I stepped back into the sunlight, it felt different. Not better, just clearer. She wasn't my problem anymore. The house felt unfamiliar after she was gone, even though it looked the same. I had moved some things around, changed the layout of the living room, threw out the bed sheets she picked out, replaced them with plain ones I ordered online without thinking too hard. But the silence had weight now, like it was waiting for someone to say something and no one ever would. The nights dragged, not because I missed her voice or presence, but because I didn't know what to do with the quiet. That first week after the diner meeting, I stayed busy on purpose. I repainted the guest room, organized every drawer in the kitchen, went through the garage like I was preparing for an inspection. But none of that really helped. I wasn't lost. I was just hollowed out in a way I hadn't expected. I thought anger would carry me longer, but it didn't. Once the emails were sent, once the bank accounts were split, once the truck was back in my driveway with a key left in the mailbox, it all became very still. She didn't fight me on anything, didn't drag her heels, didn't beg for anything more. She signed the divorce papers when they came, sent them back through her lawyer without a note. The only personal message I got from her after that was a text that said, "I hope you can move on." I stared at that message for a full minute, then deleted it. It didn't deserve a response. A few days after the paperwork was finalized, I took a long walk through the neighborhood just to get out of the house. I ended up at a bench near the trail where we used to jog on weekends. I hadn't been there since before all this started. I sat there, just watching people go by, couples walking dogs, parents with strollers, teenagers cutting through the grass to get somewhere faster. None of them knew who I was, what had just happened, or how off balance everything still felt. That's when I realized how easy it is to hide everything under a calm expression. Nobody knows until you tell them, and even then, they only see the surface. My phone buzzed. It was my brother, asking if I wanted to come over that weekend for a barbecue. I hadn't told him the full story yet. Just said Marissa and I were done, and that we were splitting everything. He didn't press, which I appreciated. I texted back, "Yeah, I'll be there," and left it at that. That Saturday, I showed up with a case of drinks and a bag of chips, like it was just another normal visit. His wife gave me a long hug when I came in, didn't say anything about Marissa, just told me to make myself at home. My nieces ran up to me like always, asking if I brought snacks, if I was staying overnight, if I was going to watch cartoons with them like I used to. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely out of place. I let them drag me to the living room and sat there while they put on some animated movie I didn't understand, but it didn't matter. Later that night, after the kids went to bed and the grill was cleaned up, my brother cracked open 2 beers and sat beside me on the back porch. "You doing all right?" he asked, not looking at me. "I'm getting there." "She's out of your life for good?" "Yeah. Signed, filed, and done." He nodded, took a long sip from his bottle. "You thinking about dating again?" "Not even a little." "Fair." We sat in silence for a while. The kind of quiet that comes easy between people who don't need to fill it with anything. "You know, when Mom passed," he said, "I thought Dad was going to fall apart. But he surprised me. Took a year, maybe more, but then he was back to being himself. Not the same, just steady again." "I'm not grieving her," I said. "I'm grieving who I thought she was." "That might be worse," he replied. He wasn't wrong. That's what made it hard to sleep at night. Not the absence of her in the bed or her voice in the house, but the fact that I'd spent years building a life around someone who was never fully honest with me. It wasn't just the cheating. It was every lie wrapped in politeness, every fake smile at dinner, every moment she nodded like she was listening but was already somewhere else. I didn't hate her. I just didn't care anymore. And that, I realized, was the final step. Before I left my brother's place, I told him the whole story. Not the watered-down version, not the polite summary I'd given everyone else. He listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally, like he was checking boxes in his head. When I finished, he didn't try to give advice or make me feel better. He just clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "You're doing better than most would." That meant more than he probably knew. On the drive home, I didn't take the highway. I took the long way, windows down, music low. Not to reflect or feel anything in particular, but just to let the night air hit me. No thoughts about her, no bitterness, no plans for revenge or closure. I had done what I needed to do. The story with her was over. The next part was mine to figure out. 3 weeks after the divorce papers were finalized, I met her one last time. She asked for it. Texted me on a Tuesday afternoon saying she just wanted to talk, not to fight. not to bring up the past, just to talk. At first, I thought about ignoring it. I'd already moved on with everything I needed to move on with. New bank account, new will, even changed my emergency contact. But curiosity made me say yes. Not because I wanted to hear some kind of apology, but because a part of me needed to close the door with my own hands and hear her say out loud that it was over. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Not the one we used to go to. Somewhere neutral. She was already sitting when I walked in, nursing a coffee that had probably gone cold. I sat across from her and waited. She looked different. Not worse. Just different. Like someone who wasn't sleeping enough but still tried to keep everything together on the surface. Her makeup looked like it had been rushed. Her hair pulled back in a way she used to only do when she didn't have time to deal with it properly. She didn't start with a greeting. "I didn't ask you here to argue," she said quickly, like she wanted to get ahead of anything I might say. "I didn't come here to argue either." She nodded, eyes lowered for a second before looking back at me. "I've had some time to think," she said, "and I wanted to say that I know I hurt you. I know what I did can't be fixed or explained in a way that makes it acceptable." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, waited to see if she was going to keep going or if that was the whole speech. She seemed to want a reaction. "I'm not going to thank you for that," I said. "You didn't do anything for me by admitting it now." She nodded again. "I know. Then what is this?" I needed to say it. Whether it changes anything or not. "It doesn't." She looked down at her hands, clasped together on the table. "I didn't think you'd be this cold." "I'm not being cold. I'm being done." "That's different." There was a long pause after that. I wasn't rushing anything. I wanted her to sit in the silence. I wanted her to understand that whatever connection we had was gone. Not burned out. Not poisoned. Just disconnected. Like a cord that had been pulled and left lying there. "I made a lot of excuses to myself," she said eventually. "About why I did what I did, why I thought it made sense, why I thought I deserved more. But none of it matters now. Did you come here to tell me you regret it?" "No," she said, firm this time. "I came here to tell you I understand the cost now." "Good." Another silence. "He didn't stay," she said, almost like a whisper. "That's not my problem. I know. I'm just saying it because it matters to me." Well, that's where we've always been different. I only cared about what mattered to both of us. She blinked hard at that. I could tell she wasn't used to hearing me say things like that. I used to be the one who let things slide, who avoided making things heavier than they already were. That was over. I wasn't mean. I wasn't trying to hurt her. But I also wasn't about to make her feel better for what she did. "I'm not asking to be friends," she said, voice lower now. "I just didn't want the last words between us to be about lawyers and money. They still are, technically." She gave a dry laugh, the kind that doesn't come from humor. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't have any to give." Another silence. "Well," she said, reaching for her bag. "I guess that's it." "Yeah," I said, standing up. "I guess it is." She walked out first. I waited a minute before leaving. Not because I needed a moment, but because I didn't want to walk out behind her like I was following. I paid for my coffee, barely touched, and stepped out into the street. After that, I didn't hear from her again. She didn't send another message. Didn't try to reach out through friends. It was like we agreed, without really saying it, that whatever was left didn't need to be touched again. It was finished. I didn't bounce back into dating. I didn't run to apps or bars or therapy sessions. I kept it simple. I went to work. I went for walks. I started going to the gym again. Not to reinvent myself, but because I finally had space to focus on something without her shadow in the corner of my plans. A few weeks later, I had dinner with my brother and his family again. This time, I stayed late. After the kids were in bed and the noise had died down, my brother poured 2 drinks and asked me, straight up, "Do you miss her?" I didn't even have to think about it. "No," I said. "Not anymore." And that was the truth. Not just a thing to say out loud. Not just something I wanted to believe. It was real. She was a part of my story, but not the whole thing. And now, that part was closed for good.